Well, we founded Reasons to Believe 9 years ago as a small group of research scientists, primarily from Caltech. One of the things we felt we had to do is to stay on top of people's reasons for unbelief. And so we send out survey teams and ask people why they are not believers in the Christian faith. And what amazes us is that the same objections come up again and again and again. In fact, when we train people to handle phone calls over our hotline or to answer correspondence, we expose them to what we call the 200 most frequently asked questions about the interaction of the Christian faith and science and the Bible, etc. And we confirm to them that that will take care of about 99% of all the questions and objections that they will hear. But there are 9 of those 200 that really take care of well over 90% of all the objections that we hear concerning the Christian faith. And I wanted to give you today a very quick summary of those 9 objections and some of the responses that we've developed to those 9 objections. And it was really quite a shock to us what these 9 were. We weren't expecting it at all. But let me pick them up for you in order. The most frequent objection we ever hear is, how can you prove that God exists? The second most frequent one, once you establish that indeed there must be a God, well, why must it be the God of the Bible? Those rank 1 and 2. And we've been doing these surveys not only in the United States but in other countries, and it doesn't seem to matter what country you go to, those always rank 1 and 2. How do you know that there must be a God? Why must it be the God of the Bible? I'm not going to spend a lot of time dealing with that today, because that's what I'll be speaking on this evening. The scientific evidences for the existence of the God of the Bible. But I'll just tip my hand a little bit and say that we're finding it to be far more persuasive to base the scientific claims for the God of the Bible on the simple sciences as opposed to the complex sciences. And so we purposely begin our arguments with mathematics, astronomy, and physics, and reserve anthropology to the very end of the line. And the rationale there is that as you move towards the more complex sciences, like zoology and anthropology, it becomes more difficult to see the forest because of the trees. Whereas in astronomy and physics, you always have an equation of state and you always know what the boundary conditions are. My friends in biology say that they find it impossible to develop an equation of state for the behavior of human beings, for example. So, but by beginning with the simple sciences, you can frame interpretations from the more complex sciences with the equations of states and the boundary conditions you gain from the simple sciences. Now you know why I chose to study astronomy. I like simplicity. But we'll be covering that tonight. And the other value of beginning with those sciences is that there's been a remarkable achievement on the part of astronomers, and that for the first time in human history they've been able to measure the heavens. Not all of its characteristics, of course, but 15 years ago we couldn't measure any of the characteristics, and now there's several dozen that are available to direct measurement. And it's on the basis of those measurements that we're able to make conclusions about the cause of the universe that we couldn't really fathom scientifically before. But that will be tonight. Number 3 on the list is the issue of evil and suffering. If God is all-powerful and all-loving, as the God of the Bible describes himself as a very loving, personal, and powerful being, then why does he tolerate the existence of evil and suffering? If he's strong enough, he should be able to get rid of it, and if he's loving enough, he should care enough to remove that item from our experience. So why is it there? And this is the most common argument put forward by atheists. In fact, I could state it more strongly. It's really the only argument that atheists bring forward to justify their atheism. Their proof of atheism is always based on the issue of evil and suffering. And we have a philosopher in our organization, and he says, well, let's just turn the tables on them. And he has developed a talk which he uses for people concerned about that issue. And his argument is there's too much evil and suffering for there not to be a God. The atheists say if evil and suffering exist, there can't be a God. But he says, let's really look at it more realistically. If God didn't exist, there should be a whole lot less evil and suffering than what we would observe in the cosmos, and therefore the existence of evil and suffering proves two things. There is a good God with an evil adversary, and argues on that basis. However, I'm convinced that the only way to give a satisfying answer to the issue of evil and suffering for the skeptics and the atheists alike, and by the way, when I refer to skepticism, I refer to it in a positive sense. What I discovered about the Christian faith, it's the only religion amongst religions of the world that gives honor to skepticism. Everything must be proven. 1 Thessalonians 5:21, believe nothing until it's been put to the tests. And so the Christian faith, unlike other religions, encourages a healthy skepticism, but not a cynicism. When it is proven, the Bible encourages to make a commitment based on that proof. But to get back to what I was referring to, I'm convinced that there is not a satisfying answer for such individuals unless you frame it in the context of the multi-dimensions that physicists have demonstrated must operate on the basis of the causer of the universe. Thanks to particle physics and astrophysics, we realize we're dealing with an entity that brought the universe into existence that has the capacity to move and operate in 2 or more dimensions of time and 10 or more dimensions of space. And in that context, there is a resolution to the problem of evil and suffering, whereas in 4 dimensions, there's a lot of philosophy, but not any really mathematically satisfying responses. And the problem there is that when you talk about evil and suffering, fundamentally it's based on the issue of divine predestination versus human free choice. And if you look at the history of the Christian church throughout the last 2,000 years, there have been denominations that have preached human free choice and denominations that have preached divine predestination. By that I mean the concept that God predetermines every word, thought, and action that we experience before the universe was even created. And yet we have this free choice. And from a human perspective, that looks like an outright contradiction. And I would agree that any theologian who tries to solve that problem in 4 dimensions will fail. You either have to reject one and accept the other, or the reverse. However, if we examine in the context of 11 or more dimensions, a satisfying resolution can be developed that can then be used as a foundation for dealing with evil and suffering. Now, normally when I'm asked to speak on the subject of evil and suffering, I refuse unless I'm given 90 minutes. Evil and suffering is one of those issues where you've got dozens of worms that crawl out of the can. And if you got 5 minutes, you can take care of one worm, but you got the other 2 dozen still squirming around. I mean, you have to deal with the issue of physical death, the issue of pain, the issue of the second law of thermodynamics, the whole idea of heaven and hell, and all these keep multiplying as you dig deeper and deeper into these issues. So I like to have 90 minutes plus to deal with it. In fact, in our television program, I told the programmer that we would not touch the subject of evil and suffering unless we could have at least 20 episodes. They gave us 22 episodes and we got through it all. But I would have never done it if they'd only given us a couple of episodes. Nonetheless, I'm going to offer this outline to you. This is not a description of the solution of the problem of evil and suffering. It's an outline that you can go through and solve it for yourself. And when people ask me for a quick answer to the issue of evil and suffering, I say the answer is found in the first 3 chapters of
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.